Today I'm going to talk about Burning Man. As you can see, I'm in my Burning Man persona of Silverman because for for more than 20 years, I've been Silverman at Burning Man, which is essentially I cover my whole body in this silver makeup. But that's not the main focus today. I'm going to be talking about my photography at Burning Man. And I'm going to share my screen now. And I hope that you're seeing a stereo pair.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Now, I should possibly have made this anaglyphic, but it's kind of late now. But today, I'm going to talk primarily about the challenges faced in trying to take stereo photos of the burning of the man at Burning Man, because that, of course, is the primary shared community activity that it's originally built around. But to understand that, we're going to have to talk about a little bit about the event. So if you don't know what Burning Man is, this won't make much sense to you. So a brief history is in order. It started in 1986 on Baker Beach in San Francisco when a man named Larry Harvey and some of his friends burned a human effigy on the summer solstice. They repeated that each summer solstice, and it grew larger and larger, a bigger party every year, until 1990, when local law enforcement told them they couldn't burn the man. So they took it out to Black Rock Desert, which is 90 miles north of Reno, Nevada. And they burned it at Black Rock Desert the day before Labor Day. Black Rock Desert is an amazing place. It's miles and miles of nothing but flat, dry lake bed. And it's a great place for Burning Man because it's a place where the artist could come and create a temporary autonomous zone of creative freedom. And my first year was 1996, and that was a pivotal year because it was the last year of unbridled freedom and anarchy at Burning Man. Because back in those days, in 1996, you could come and go as you pleased, camp wherever you wanted to, you could drive your car, you could go to the hot springs, as you can see here, anytime that you wanted. You could drive your car, you could shoot your gun, you could do both at the same time at the drive-by shooting gallery. It was wild, creative, and dangerous, and one person died when he drove his motorcycle into a pickup truck, and a tent with a couple of people in it got run over by a car. So the organization decided things had to change. And so now there are rules, lots of rules. But notice in this photo that I think sort of captures the innocence of the early days of Burning Man. This is the sort of the pristine surface of the playa, which is a dried dust that's very flat and solid until you drive vehicles on it or walk on it, and then it breaks up into a powdery dust. So fast forward 20 years from 1996, and the event has grown from 8,000 people when I first attended to 80,000 people. And the art has become massive and impressive, as in this steel sculpture in this image. So you have 80,000 people having a wild party in the desert and sharing their art and creativity for 1 week, and then it's gone. They party and burn things in a very hostile environment. The playa, as I said, is a dry lake bed. It's not sand, it's a very fine powder. When it breaks up, it releases dust. And in this photo, you have what we call a whiteout, which is basically a dust storm. The wind picks up the dust and it can be so dense that you can't see more than a couple of feet, as is in this photo. And you notice the photographer who was taking a picture of Silverman, because I was there, completely painted silver, and photographers like to take my picture like that. And you can see he's completely in dust. You can't see more than a foot or two behind him. And you notice how he's trying to protect his camera with cloth and plastic. During one of these whiteout dust storms, you can only see a couple of feet and breathing is difficult. So if you endeavor to document the event and the art with stereo photography, you must, of course, get shots of the burning of the man itself. In 1996, my first year, I had no idea what to expect. I brought my Kodak stereo and my Fed stereo cameras in a few rolls of slide film. And I tried to get a shot of the burning of the man and see this is handheld using the Fed stereo. It's not a great photo, but it does sort of capture the anarchy and chaos that was prevalent at the time. The following year, I ended up behind this whale spouting fire. And one thing I learned then is if you're going to get a shot of the burn of the man, you have to plan ahead. You have to get in front of the crowd and be prepared. Now, this photo is one I haven't shared before. The story behind this is that in 1998, I didn't bring enough slide film. So by Friday, I had run out of film. And I went running around trying to find other photographers to beg them to control them into letting me have some slide film. But one guy, he didn't have any slide film for me, but he brought a lot of single-use, so-called disposable cameras. And so he gave me 2 of those. And I took this photo using those single-use cameras. The reason I'm sharing this now is you see that odd sphere that's on poles. 1998, well, nobody knew what those were about. But when they burned the man, those exploded in a huge fireball. And that was the first year that they used a fireball at the burn of the man. And that sort of set a precedent. It then became a challenge to capture that explosion of the fireball at the burn of the man. This photo is from 2001. I think I was using the Fed stereo again. So I'm lucky to have some people in the foreground to provide some depth. Beginning in 1999, I was able to get a pass to get inside the safety perimeter ahead of the crowd, but there's mixed blessings to that. For one thing, there's a lot of fire spinners there, and you don't know where they're going to be. They will be between you and the man, and it's kind of chaotic. And for many years, the strategy that I had was to get that pass to be inside the safety perimeter. And then I would set up wired synced SLRs, film SLRs, on separate tripods about 5 to 6 feet apart. I would align them to a point on the distant hills to get them, get them framed and properly synchronized. Unfortunately, what would happen almost 50% of the time, someone would bump the cameras. And in this shot, this is one of the years when the cameras were bumped by the fire spinners or someone else. And the best I could do is crop the image to this, what you're seeing. So after a few years of having my twin SLRs on separate tripods bumped, I decided to just rely on a standard stereo camera and tried to get people in the foreground to provide depth. This shot is from 2004. 2005 was my first year using digital cameras. And I had a pair of Sony V1 synced with the Lank Shepherd synchronizing device. And I used a normal stereo base because I wasn't set up to use these cameras far apart. I didn't have the wiring to do that. So I decided to get a shot from a mutant vehicle, sometimes called an art car, to be above the crowd. But I would need to use the flash to get something in the foreground. What you see in this shot is what I call a playa snow. Digital cameras with small sensors, because of the very shallow, the short focal length, have a very broad depth of field. As a result, dust, which is always in the air at Burning Man, will become eliminated by the flash and produce this snow-like effect that makes it almost, if you have a standard digital camera with a small sensor, you basically cannot use flash. So 2006, I again tried using the separate SLRs within the safety area, and again, they were bumped. 2007 was a wild year. There was a partial eclipse of the moon that was going to happen around 2 a.m. on Tuesday of the week. So I was excited to try and get a stereo shot of the man in the foreground with the eclipse of the moon in the background. Unfortunately, there was a gentleman there who decided that Burning Man was becoming too safe and he wanted to take it back to the wild days of anarchy. So he decided to set the man on fire. And you probably can't see it, but he is there on the left side, what would be the the right leg of the man. And he was setting it on fire at the time I took this photo. And of course, the man started burning. There were people under that pavilion, under the man. It was chaos. It was pretty wild. But this is sort of, he wanted to bring back the random anarchy, the danger, and the pranks. But then later, I was able to get this shot, which somewhat captured the explosion of the fireball, but it wasn't a great shot in 2007. So then for a few years, I kind of gave up on trying to get the fireball because there's no warning about when it's going to happen. So I would, often would miss it. So I would then instead try to get in within the safety perimeter and get shots of the fire spinners. So in 2009, I did that, and I brought my Fuji W1, which was just released at that time. And I brought it there, and I got an arrangement. I was going to take photos of this fire spinning troop. And unfortunately, for some reason, the Fuji W1 went into 2D mode, and I didn't know it. But I got a few shots using my backup fed stereo camera. This is the shot of the burn 2009. In 2011, I started experimenting with using an 8-foot bar for hyperstereo. And I finally captured the fireball. This was using Canon G11s synced with Stereo Data Maker at the opposite ends of an 8-foot aluminum bar. 2012, again, I used the 8-foot bar, but I just was a few milliseconds too early to capture the fireball well. 2017, I tried a different approach. I thought, I was going to give up on going through the bureaucratic hassle of getting the pass to be in the safety perimeter. And instead, I decided I would just get to the right front of the crowd. And I had an 8-foot, not an 8-foot, sorry, a 4-foot stereo base. And I got in the front, and I was situated such that I couldn't move because I was surrounded by people who were not happy with me having a camera in the first place. And this ranger decided to sit right in front of me. And this is one of the few images I could salvage where he was a little bit to the side. So, you just don't have control over these situations. In 2018, I came prepared with the same 4-foot hyperbar, but I thought I would get above the crowd by getting on this human-powered vehicle that you see. That's myself as Silverman with my 2 cameras. Behind me are my friend Sean in Obscenity, and Sean's double-decker human-powered pedaled craft that he brought. And so I sat on sort of the steel bar of this next to Obscenity and tried to get shots there. This photo was taken by another stereo photographer at Burning Man named Joseph Pearl. And he took this using a stereo realist and slide film. Even though it's monochromatic, it was color slide film, but all of the illumination, of course, is from that propane flame blast that my friend Sean is firing off. So the following year, 2019, I came back. I used an 8-foot bar, so 8-foot stereo separation. And I was again on that second deck of Sean's quad cycle, human-powered mutant vehicle. And I got this shot, which is one of my favorites. I think I pretty much captured the fireball going off. You can see the outline of the man at the very center of the fire. And the hyper works quite well. Of course, it's cropping out all of the hundreds of thousands of people in front. They're cropped out. And this was Canon G1X cameras synchronized with stereo data maker. So 2022, I came back again with my 8-foot, after COVID, I came back with my 8-foot bar again. And I was invited to be on the wonderful mutant vehicle called Clock Ship Terry, that's created by Andy Tibbetts, who's a friend of Claire Dean, whom many of you know. So they invited me to be on the Clock Ship Terry for the burn, and I was happy about that. But there are always problems and limitations in trying to use one of these beautiful mutant vehicles as your platform for stereo photography. How do you handle an 8-foot bar on a crowded vehicle in what is, in a sense, a wild party, and do that without interfering with other people's experience? So this is the best shot that I got in 2022 on the Clock Ship Terry. And the next shot will show you why this is the best shot that I could get. And that is that, unfortunately, you don't have much control. Even though I was on a mutant vehicle and above the crowd of people, unfortunately, someone had a vehicle right in front of us. You can see there's something that looks kind of like a cage with 2 people on it. And not only were they in front of us and poking up into the line of sight of the man when he burned, but also they would randomly shoot off shots of propane fire. So it just completely messed up my photography that night. So yeah. So anyway, and then you might have heard last year we had a little bit of rain. When rain happens, it turns the playa dust into mud that makes it impossible to drive a car or ride a bike, or even it makes it even difficult to walk. So you had a city of 80,000 people that were trapped for a few days. They couldn't leave. And I was one of those. And unfortunately, I came down with COVID exactly when the rain started. So I was faced with a rather difficult situation. I had to stay at least 6 feet away from other people. I wanted to try to shoot the burn. One of my Canon G1X cameras died. My 8-foot bar was bent. So what I ended up doing is I took 2 Canon T5 SLRs. It used about a 1-foot stereo base, and I put that on a monopod and tried to raise it above the crowd of people that I was standing 6 feet away from. I managed to get some shots, but they were not well synchronized. But I did get a good shot of the burn of the temple. There's this other burn that happens at Burning Man that's very solemn. It's meant to be a release of letting go of lost loved ones and such. And this happened, a couple of days after it was supposed to occur. And the crowd had thinned quite a bit. I think this captures kind of the loneliness that I was experiencing at the time. And the last thing I want to mention is I have my photos on a VR platform called VR Chat. So I have 18 images from each of 27 years of Burning Man. And if you have a Meta Quest or some other virtual reality viewing device, it's a really good way to see stereo photos. So if you have an Oculus Quest, go to VR Chat, search for Burning Man, and you'll find those images.